welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm excited we're spending this time here today. We've got quite a show lined up. Our first guest, Peggy Sealfon, is here today to talk to us about her book, Escape from Anxiety. So welcome to the show, Peggy.
Oh, thank you, Marianne. It's really a joy to be here with you. I'm very excited.
Oh, yes. Hey, what great fun it is to have you here. You are one of the premier personal development coaches and speakers, and this is kind of your topic, all about anxiety.
Yes, it is. I've become internationally renowned expert in anxiety, and so much of it really began with my own anxiety, and I think so many of us start that way.
Well, for our listeners that are new to your journey, why don't you share a little bit with us about how did you even come to this place that you had the inspiration to write this book?
That's a great question and a very long story, but I'll be brief. I've really had so many twists and turns in my life, and I'm basically a serial entrepreneur. So I kind of understand now why part of my search through so many different careers was really to find my real purpose and my effort to find who I am and find happiness. But in the process, I was always chronically stressed because I was always putting so much pressure on myself, working to be successful when, in fact, I didn't really have an idea what that looked like. So my first career, I was a journalist in New York City and was absolutely at survival level. I was always on deadlines, always trying to manage living in Greenwich Village. So I was really manic, and I had these incredible highs of creativity, productivity, and then I'd crash and burn. And believe me, when I say crash and burn, I mean it literally. I actually commuted around New York City on a motorcycle. So physically, emotionally, and even though in the eyes of the outside world, I appeared successful because I was writing for the New York Times and Newsweek International, inside I felt like a failure. And I was always coming from a place of lack, and that insecurity continually put me in a state of anxiety. So I began training in a variety of different modalities to manage my own pains, and I just found that I had always been suffering, so a big part of my work now is really helping others develop skills and self-empowerment so that they can release all struggles and really be in their greatness. And truthfully, we all have greatness and happiness within, and we just need to learn how to reveal it to ourselves and really unleash them.
Well, I think a lot of people can relate to your story. I mean, New York's kind of a hub. I mean, I was in Southern California where, it's not too far from LA, where things are pretty intense as well. And regardless where you geographically live, a lot of times when people are dealing with high stress jobs or jobs that require a lot, it can be a little bit much.
It takes a toll. And I was about 23 years old, and I would have these neck and back spasms that literally would reduce me to a puddle on the floor. It was so debilitating. And over subsequent years, I'd get these mysterious illnesses. I developed mono. And while I was seeing my internist to treat the mono, he discovered I had a heart murmur. And so at that point, I thought, my life is over. My heart is murmuring. This isn't good. So really, it was never smooth sailing, but I didn't have the skills to understand how to really navigate through the storms.
Yeah. And I can definitely relate with that as well. When I was in my 20s, I was just like, go. I was on just go. That was it.
Right. Autopilot,
just go and do it, and, burnout's a pretty easy thing. So you had that. And you studied these modalities. Where did it go from that to writing this book?
I never did answer that question, did I? Good question. Thanks for bringing me back on track. Well, I told you it's a twisty, turny journey, so you definitely go awry. Mm-hmm. So as I started training in everything from ancient wisdom teachings to neurosciences, nutrition, functional medicine, neurolinguistic programming. I did all these different trainings over the years, and what I found was that I had the solutions to help people relieve suffering. And so I actually trained and certified as a life coach as well, and hung my shingle, and I started working with people. And I found that I needed more support to give them. So what really transpired was that I took all of the different trainings that I had really successfully applied in helping people manage their stresses and their fears and their anxieties. And I really wanted to put it in one resource. And that was really how the book came about. And it's really developed in a way that allows people to use it very quickly and effectively. So I arranged it. It's Supercharge Your Life with powerful strategies from A to Z. And so the A to Z are points of the alphabet, which each one really provides an interrupter that can interrupt those patterns of stress and anxiety. And so they're bite-sized and they're easy to use. And so when you're in a moment of panic or feeling really uncomfortable or feeling at a real low point, you can almost open to any letter and use it. And then the second part of the book is more foundational understanding about the neurosciences, and it goes much deeper into how to develop your own protocol for sustainable relief. So that was kind of the genesis of it.
Well, and I think for people who are looking for somebody to work with, they typically want somebody who's been there, done that, gone through that path that they've gone through. So, and you kind of have in many ways, being an entrepreneur in many different levels, that's extremely high stress, and especially if you're working in different environments, and then looking for ways to also relieve stress and just move that to a different level. I know you've done lots of trainings as well. So you have this great varied background that allows you to really work with anybody at any level that they're at.
It's so true. I feel really grateful that I went through the adversity that I went through to bring me to this point where I really do have the opportunities to resonate with people from all different walks of life in all sorts of different situations. And it really allows me to be able to relate in ways that they can receive the information and really be able to respond and assimilate and grow from it. And so it's been really exciting for me to have the gift to be able to do all of that. But a lot of it really comes from intuition, understanding what another person is going through, that compassionate, really insightful tuning in, and then add on to that all these different levels of trainings, which I can pull from depending on what someone's really responsive to. So it's really been very gratifying for me.
So in your book, you talk about the ABCs. What is that and how can we use it?
Well, the ABCs are really just the format for being able to access these different, what I call interrupters, which each letter, as I explained, of the alphabet has a kind of different strategies that someone can use to interrupt those moments of pain, discomfort, disorientation, being unfocused, any of those kinds of moments of experiences. And just by opening to any one of these techniques, they can, in that moment, resolve how they're feeling. And so it's really about shifting. In the neurosciences, we've learned about just these neural pathways that get grooved into patterns and habits, and stress and anxiety are actually patterns and habits. And we just keep defaulting to them because that's what we've conditioned ourselves to do. So the book gives you kind of a life raft to jump out of that boat and be able to really float and then even soar by having these different techniques that allows you to sort of change that moment of discomfort that you might be experiencing. And it's really just the first step, and the second part of the book is really the bigger step. And what I do a lot with clients now is really taking them further to really be able to intensify the results more sustainably. And that's really the key. I think when someone's feeling discomfort, I know for myself, when you're going through some panicky moment, you just need relief in that moment, and you need to have the tools and techniques to do that. Then you also need to be able to develop skills that you can resolve those uncomfortable moments more long term so that you're not constantly defaulting back to them, and literally create new neural pathways. And we can do this. This is so exciting, the science that we're in the middle of now in the world we live in over the last 10 years with understanding brain plasticity, and that we can really adapt and change. And I don't care what age you are, you have the ability. It's just, do you have the desire? Are you ready? Do you want to? And then there are choices that you have.
So no more of that saying you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You really
can. Right, there you go.
What are some of the ways that we can better understand anxiety? Because I think a lot of times people just kind of blanket label it. And I feel if we have a better understanding of it, it makes it so it's not such a big thing.
I think you're exactly right, Marianne. That's so true. We live in this culture now where we really accept stress and fear as the norm almost. I mean, look at advertising. And if you don't have what they're peddling, you'll be unhappy, or you could even die, right? Mm-hmm. So we've kind of fallen into step with that group mentality. And we're not being mindful or really thinking about what we're doing or how we're doing it. So it's really understanding that, again, stress is something we need to become more and more aware of, and not just have this knee-jerk reaction that, oh, I'm just overwhelmed and stressed and it's normal, because we really can switch out of that and we can really change it. In fact, one of the clients I've been working with, it's really funny because one of the techniques I taught her was one of these interrupter techniques, which is a relaxation technique, and she has been tasked with doing it daily. That's how it really begins to work when you start creating the habits, and the only way to do that is to do it daily. So she was fairly diligent, except this one particular day she wasn't feeling anxious or stressed, but she knew she was going to be talking to me because we had a coaching session that day. So she thought, I better do this because I know Peggy's going to ask me and I don't want to lie to her. So she did it. And here's the thing that was so amazing. She said, I really didn't feel uncomfortable or stressed until I did the technique, and I realized, wow, this is what relaxation is. This is really how I can feel. So I think we get used to feeling that tension and that stress. And it isn't until something happens to us that wakes us up to realize, something's out of balance and I need to address it. Does that make sense to you?
It makes perfect sense. I think that looking at it and not trying to normalize it is a good thing, because then we can start really understanding it better, and then have resources like the resources of your book and some of the techniques that you use to kind of make shifts in that and turn that around.
Exactly. That's it.
So, and that brings me to my next question about resilience. So is that something that can be taught, and how does that work with anxiety?
Absolutely. Resilience is really part of our humanness. And honestly, I couldn't, let me go back to New York City, because when 9/11 happened, I was so devastated by the impact of that, as so many other people in the world, of course. Right. And I couldn't go and visit the site. It took me 15 years to get back there. And I have to tell you, when I finally got there and saw what has been rebuilt, to me that was a testament to human resilience and the ability to really adapt, rebuild, refocus, and move on and progress. And so, yes, resilience can be developed, can be learned. And a lot of developing resilience and the ability to really overcome adversity takes certain skills and certain blocks of information that allow you to develop your own techniques for doing it, because we're each a little bit different. We have different backgrounds, different beliefs. And so it's really important to find what's really going to resonate with you and be able to use on a continual basis to develop more and more resilience.
So how do our beliefs and memories play a part in managing anxiety?
That's a huge question. How much time do we have, Marianne?
Well, we've got some time, so we're good.
It's so amazing how much our programming affects our lives. And so by our programming, I'm talking about how we grew up, the messages we got from parents, from teachers, from friends, from the mailman, just taking in information that planted seeds of belief in us that over the years come out in different ways. And I'll tell you a quick story about one of my clients who was just an amazing man, very intelligent, and he was working on a project for an organization. He was tasked with having to develop a directory of every single person in the organization. There were 125 people. He was extremely meticulous, getting everyone's photograph, getting everybody's names and wives' names and email addresses and detail. And he is just amazing with detail. So he was really excited about getting this project done, and he couldn't wait to hold this directory in his hands and see it in printed form. Only the organization at the end of the day decided that everything is so electronic now that they would just introduce it in a digital form and not print it at all. Well, he became inconsolable, and he behaved ridiculously with associates in this organization. He was angry, he was upset, and he actually began developing migraine headaches, and that was when I started working with him. And so it turned out that when he was a youngster, he had quite a bullying father who was always telling him that he would never amount to anything because he never gets anything done correctly. And guess what? He applied that trauma of message and understanding throughout his adulthood. He just carried it on, and it again defaulted into current situations when it wasn't appropriate at all. And so we do this all the time. We have this preconditioning, pre-programming, and there's lots of ways of releasing it. And of course, in modern psychology, we always look at the cause of fears. Specifically, was there a trauma or a specific accident in your life, and especially in early childhood? But a lot of times we don't see the messages. We don't see the seeds that were planted, the comments that someone made that a child who didn't have enough discerning ability at that time just took to heart and stored it away to be used inappropriately later on. So what's interesting for me about the trainings that I now incorporate is that I really teach you to release these traumas from your body and mind energetically, so you can really let go of what's holding you back at the source. And so instead of storing these emotions continually in our bodies and our brains, you can really develop this new programming, and that's what I help people do. And that's what's so important for us all to really pay more attention to, because we become ruled by the past, and we don't need to be. We need to be in the present.
Now, when you do this kind of release, is this something that you do with people in person, where they're doing like a coaching session with you? Is this kind of a coaching energetic session? What would that look like?
It depends on the person, to be honest. I do a lot of coaching really all over the country, so I use Skype a lot, which is really helpful because it's really like being there. You're almost one-on-one. I do in person when people are in my area, so I will meet with people one-on-one, and it depends what they need. I do coaching, but I've also been trained in things like esoteric energy medicine, reconnective healing with Dr. Eric Pearl. So a lot of it is based on energy, but there's different approaches to how you access that energy.
And how you move that out. And then I'm guessing that you would then give them new tools that they can use going forward, so that way they're building new patterns instead of recreating the old ones.
Absolutely. And that's the key, is really empowering people. I try to minimize the amount of coaching connection I have to make with someone, because my mission is to empower them to really be able to fly and be on their own. I don't want them being reliant on me. I want to give them the skills that are built into them that they can use on an ongoing basis. And some people just sometimes need a light to be able to see what those tools are for themselves before they can move into it. So that's really the goal.
Well, and I would think that self-talk is probably a big thing, because I know in your book you talk about the power of words and the vibration. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. Self-talk is part of energy. So thoughts are energy. And so often people are not aware of the self-sabotaging that they do to ourselves, the negative thinking. Oh, I can't do that. I'm not smart enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not capable enough. So if you can develop first awareness about what you're saying to yourself, you can really begin to change things that are really disrupting your ability to be all that you are. So you can begin to interrupt and change those patterns. I'll tell you a quick story I play competitive tennis. Mm-hmm. And I was playing one evening, and I don't like playing at night, and my team threw me into playing singles because they didn't have a singles player. And so I hadn't played singles in a while, but there I was playing singles on red clay, which I dislike playing on because you can't see the ball, especially at night. And I was playing a woman who was 20 years my junior, and she was left-handed, and she was making really bad line calls. So throughout the match, I'm constantly saying to myself, what an idiot. Why did I agree to play this? I hate playing at night. I can't believe this woman is doing these awful things. I'm miserable. This is horrible. I can't do this. I can't. And I've been in this training for many, many years, and I caught myself saying all these things. And of course, I was self-destructing, and I was playing really, really badly. And I started changing it. I started changing the way I was thinking about myself, the way I was talking about myself. And there's a wonderful phrase that I learned from actually Richard Rogers, who was a pastor of a Unity church. And I actually have it in my book, Escape from Anxiety. And I started reciting this line to myself, and I just started saying, I'm a person of great value. I'm an expression of the divine. And I just repeated it over and over. And as I repeated it, honestly, I could feel the energetic shift as I was being puffed up and energized. And I got so focused. And I thought, well, but she's an expression of the divine also. But I'm not going to pay attention to that right now. I'm paying attention to me. And it was after a very long day of work, and it was an evening match. And at the end of 3 hours, I was victorious. And I wouldn't have been if I hadn't paid attention to the self-talk.
Well, and even if, let's say, you hadn't won the match, you really had in your head, because you had gotten that self-talk to dissipate and really focused on what it is, your true essence.
Absolutely. And that's the key. It's really coming back into that mind-body integration. And that's where you find your power, because that's where you function so much more optimally. In fact, it's funny because it puts you into the zone. It puts you into that place where you really access everything in your power in that moment. And just to go back to another tennis illustration, I was watching the Australian Open back in January, and it was incredible when I think he was a 60 seed player, Misha Zverev, was playing against Andy Murray and beat him. And it was like shocking. And so the interviewer ran on the court and said, Misha, how did you do it? And Misha shrugged his shoulders and he said, I don't know. I felt like I was in a coma. But, when you think about what he said, that is the zone. You don't feel like you're there. You almost go into this unconscious place, but you function at your optimal. And it's a remarkable feeling and sensation. And so it's being able to really allow yourself to come back to that integrated state of being, because that's where we really have our most power.
So we've got a few minutes here. And so what are some ways that our listeners can de-stress and just get into a state of great feeling relax right now?
Right now, take a nice deep breath in through your nose and let go with a huge sigh. And when you do that, it literally signals your nervous system to relax. And actually, I'd love to give your listeners a free audio they can access.
Oh, sure.
And it's a 3-minute audio, and they can go to 3minutes2destress.com. And it's the numeral 3, so 3minutes2destress.com. And what I recommend is that they download it and literally use it every day. Download it onto smartphone, carry it with you. Whenever you're feeling out of sorts, use that as an interrupter so that you can just change that feeling. And as you learn the breathing technique that's in the 3 minutes to distress, you can start to practice it. So I recommend to a lot of my clients when they're online in the grocery store and they're really irritated because it's a long line, or they're in the express lane and someone's there with 20 items instead of less than 10, and they're getting aggravated, start practicing the breathing, because then that time that you're waiting, instead of being irritated and aggravated, you're using it productively to develop really good, relaxing, calming skills for yourself.
Now, is this part of the techniques that you use to get people to remap their brain?
It is actually. Because again, it interrupts the patterns of stress and anxiety. And that's the key to developing these new neural pathways. And a lot of people, honestly, don't know how to relax. They don't know how to be in a state of total integration. And I have another technique that I offer on my website called Yoga Nidra, which is a yogic sleep, integrative relaxation. And that takes you into very deep levels of relaxation where you literally restore, renew, revitalize, and even regenerate. And it takes a minimum of 20 minutes to do it so that you really enter into that deep state of relaxation. But it's a great way to really, again, use as an interrupter, but also to really learn how to truly relax. And when you truly relax, you literally activate the dormant healing powers in your own body. So it restores health, it restores well-being, it activates your creativity. So there's really exciting opportunities that are so simply available to us. And we're always looking for another pill or another something that isn't built into our biology. And the things that I teach are all built in. You walk around with it. You have it available. You just need to understand where it is, how to access it, and use it. And the key is using it, practicing.
Well, I think all these tips and this information so great. I highly suggest our listeners go out and pick up their own copy of Escape from Anxiety, which they can get on Amazon, and it's also available on your website. And where can they go to connect with you?
Oh, yes. I would love to hear from anyone and everyone. They can go to my website, which is peggysealfon.com, or they can go to escapefromanxiety.com, which is the book link, but they can get to me through that. Or I would love to connect with people on Facebook. So I'm at Peggy Sealfon, Personal Development Coach, and I offer lots of tips and advice on there as well. I also do a monthly newsletter. So if people visit my site, they can sign up for that and get monthly information that can be helpful to just allow them to live their lives better.
Oh. Well, Peggy, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us today.
Marianne, thank you so much. I really enjoy being with you, and I really appreciate the opportunity to reach your listeners and help them in whatever way resonates with them. So thank you.
We are going to pause here for a quick break, and we will be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
Ben Wexler is a gifted leadership development and strategy consultant for professionals who want to transform their organizations and careers. Through a uniquely personalized set of processes, participants discover their unique knowledge, how to leverage that knowledge and experience, and then put it all together with a global strategy. You're more valuable, your organization is more valuable, and the change is viral. Contact Ben at 630-881-1074. 630-881-1074.
This is Jennifer McGill. My highly anticipated new album, Unbreakable, is now available at jennifermcgill.com. Everything from power ballads to high-energy jam-out-in-your-car songs. I used my highest joys and deepest pains to create empowering songs of love, strength, healing, and restoration so that you can be unbreakable too. Get your copy of Unbreakable today from jennifermcgill.com. Because who doesn't want to be unbreakable?
Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so excited we're spending this time today. Our next guest, Allison Sutter, is here today to talk to us not only about her book, but her program and her messaging, Accelerate Your Mojo. So welcome to the show, Allison.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Oh, what a joy it is to have you here. So I got my hands on your book and talk about a fountain of information. My goodness.
I'm glad you like it.
I do. And, I think it's good to kind of start at the beginning with this because, a lot of people, they look at this and they're like, well, Mojo, and they may have their own definition for what that means. What's your definition for Mojo?
Well, I'll tell you both Accelerate and Mojo because that's the title of the book and everything else. Mm-hmm. So Accelerate traditionally means for most people to go faster. In this sense, it doesn't. It means to realize something sooner. And realization is a very different term than speed. So this is a revelation type of process and program. Mojo to me is that spirit aspect of you, that non-physical aspect of all of us that's connected to source energy, infinite intelligence, God, goddess type energy. That aspect of us that is really the real us. So when I talk about accelerating Mojo, I'm really talking about harnessing this aspect of us to create more of the realities that we like to be living.
Well, I think that's so important because a lot of times people, they kind of get stuck in their stuff. And they're like, well, life is really hard or things are really difficult. And I keep meeting the same kind of guys or the same kind of things happen to me at work. My bosses always hate me. There's always these kind of things that go on as far as repetition and pattern. And sometimes it's kind of like they can't see the forest from the trees because they're so close to it.
Well, absolutely. And one of the things that I want to be a discussion in both self-help and personal development and spirituality going forward amongst everybody is this aspect of how we create our own realities. And so really my work is about moving away from this conversation of victimization, both from a physical standpoint of like, gee, I keep running into this coworker, I keep dating this kind of person, or, you know, those kinds of tangible conversations, but also the conversations that victimize us in the spiritual world, like karma, in terms of if it's being used in the sense of, oh, this lifetime to this lifetime is following me, or there's a spiritual energy haunting me, or these kinds of senses of victimization that happen in conversations in spirituality and metaphysics as well as our tangible experiences. So, you know, I'm ready to table those and say, let's start from a different perspective. Let's start from the conversation of wholeness, and let's go from there to talk about how we create our own realities. And importantly, perception is a huge topic that we need to be chewing on, and really understanding how our perspective on something is so important to the quality of our lives, really.
Yeah, how it colors everything. Well, you know, I like how you discuss that, and I'm glad you brought that up, because, you know, there's a lot of things to be gained from accepting everything that happens in your life, even the not so awesome stuff. And I hear you talk about that, and so I'd like for you to expand about that.
Well, when you start any thought process or any conversation from this point of us being a non-physical energy incarnate, coming here to express ourselves through this physical vehicle, you can then come from a platform of understanding who you really are, which is pure love. So you're this vibration of pure love, and you incarnate into this experience, and you have this lens that you look through called the physical human, and we have, you know, all sorts of emotional guidance along this scale. We go all the way down to depression and angst and grief, all the way up to elation. So we have this emotional scale that we get to work through to know where we're vibrating at any given time. So we go through this experience after experience after experience, and some of them we deem as negative. And that's a perspective that we take, I think, in my opinion, because we've forgotten who we really are, which is this energy of pure love. We've also forgotten to talk about that, and we talk more about, like I just said, we talk more about how we're victims. And that happens both in personal development and self-help and spirituality just as much as it does everywhere else. So there's all this conversation about how, you know, I can attract the good things, but the bad things aren't my fault. It's like, well, let's just take a step back and let's say, because back in the 60s, Jane Roberts channeled Seth. And Seth said, he was a non-physical energy, and he said, you create your own reality. And even Napoleon Hill, you know, what you can achieve, perceive, believe, all of that. Both of those are talking about both physical and non-physical. So what you can achieve and believe, you know, and all of that. Napoleon Hill was also talking about the non-physical aspect, the inner world as well as the external world. So really this is a conversation. It's not a do this and you'll fix that perspective or you'll change your perspective. It's an evolutionary concept that says let's realign ourselves in every experience that we're deeming as negative. And let's go back and say, all right, so we're a non-physical love-based being, and we have these habits and patterns and beliefs. And so let's take, for example, today. I went to a business networking meeting, and we've had torrential rains in Chicago to the point where streets are flooded. And my typical way home was diverted to the point where I had to go, 45 minutes out of my way to get home when it could have been a 5-minute trip, literally a 5-minute trip. And so you could say, well, that was terrible. God, I can't believe that happened to you. Sure. That's just a normal experience where you could say, God, I'm a victim of the weather. Or you could say, I create my own reality. And for some reason, unbeknownst to me at this moment, I don't know why I needed to divert myself quite yet, but I did. And so in the experience itself, when you find yourself groaning and moaning about how now you're stuck in traffic and you gotta go to the bathroom and, all this stuff keeps happening to you, you've got to take a step back and go, whoa, okay, I literally create my own reality. This experience is of my creation, which takes you really far into the metaphysical, because most people have a hard time going there. So like, well, I don't create the weather. I don't create this. I don't create that. Well, let's just say we do. Okay. And then let's accept this as an unfolding that is now putting in place all the things that I've been asking for, because this whole 7-step process is a circular process. It's a recycled process, and it starts with things like asking. But so you're going through this experience, and you have to know that this what seems like a mundane, ridiculous experience, driving 45 minutes north to get home, is the perfect creation that is allowing all the other pieces to come into place of all the other things that I'm looking to create. When you can do that, then you begin to release yourself from the sense of victimization, from the weather, from your car breaking down, from not getting the right job, not making enough money, all of these topics that seem, depending on how we're looking at them, big or small.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's a certain amount of freedom as well that comes with accepting personal responsibility that most people don't realize. Because once you do, you can really take an honest look at the patterns that you're seeing and the things that are going on. It's not really, at least I look at it not necessarily as a good or bad. It's like, oh, that's showing up. I need to make adjustments,
Yeah, and even personal responsibility can have a tone sometimes, depending on how we're interpreting that, as a reason to beat ourselves over the head with a hammer. Like, oh, God, I did that. But
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like, well, shouldn't you take personal responsibility? And that comes from when we were kids, probably, where people go, you should be doing this, and you should be doing this. And we're like, oh, my God, I'm not doing enough, I'm not good enough, and all the things that we tell ourselves. But if that is the case for somebody who's listening to this, and they go, I can't wrap my mind around that and release myself from the idea of personal responsibility and I'm a loser, I'm a bad person, I'm not enough, then the next step is to yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry that my phone beeped and I lost.
Hey, that happens. I got it. It's just interesting because it does kind of take you down a different path, and then it gets into some of the other things you talked about, which is beliefs. And I kind of want to touch on that a little bit because a lot of us have that going on. It's stuff that very well-meaning people have imprinted on us from a very young age. And so what I understand is a lot of your clients, and you talk about this often, is they feel really relaxed and better about life. And I think you attributed part of that to kind of looking at those beliefs and shattering those. Did I get that right, or was it attributed to something else?
Well, beliefs are enormous. Beliefs are what are literally creating the fabric, the texture, the tone, the taste of our reality. So there's something, but also in personal development, they've been used as a way to victimize ourselves. Again, like with the term subconscious, if it's being mean, if it's meaning, or the definition the person is using is an aspect of your mind that you don't know is there, is messing with you, well, there's a sense of victimization. So I'm out to change that, because if we go back to our original conversation, we're pure positive energy. We're whole, complete, complex, godlike beings that project ourselves into this incarnate experience. The thing is, we bring all of that with us, but we've just been trained through, I don't know how long. I mean, I don't know how long the conversation about subconscious beliefs has been going on, and it's thick. It's thick, it's deep. It's become part and parcel of who we are. But I'm saying let's stop, because if we create our own reality, then we do. We create the conversations. We create the definitions. We create the opportunities to explore life in certain ways. So we created, and I do talk about this in the book, and as humans, we created an idea that said, here's a term, we'll call it subconscious mind, and we'll use it to explain the crappy things that happen to us that we don't like. Mm-hmm. But it's a sense of victimization. So what I'm saying is let's redefine as much as we can in the ways that are easy for us to do that. So we need to just be aware of how we feel and look at what's happening in our reality. And that's all the proof that you need to know what an active belief is. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
You don't need to pay anyone to tell you that. You don't need to do backflips. You don't need to do therapy. And all of those things could benefit you, and people do those, and they're wonderful. You don't have to, though, because really when you look at how we create our reality, the proof that you need of an active belief is how you feel, which is your guidance system, which tells you the vibrational rate that you are in this moment, and your physical reality, your experiences, your opportunities, your connections, your people in your life. But, that's a deep pill to swallow. That's a big pill. It's like, whoa.
It can be a lot for somebody that's kind of starting on that journey and going, okay, wait a minute. That's a whole lot,
Well, that's why I talk about in the book, too. You start with the little things. Don't start with the relationship with your mother that's been horrible for 30 years. Don't. Start with little things and begin to find the opportunities. And you can even test yourself with something that's called the threshold of belief. And you can feel within yourself the place at which your belief cracks, so to speak. It's like, let's say somebody's starting a business and they were new to business. And they were like, oh, I think I could make some great changes in 5 years. And you can feel their energy in alignment with that. They're like, yeah, I could do some pretty good stuff in 5 years. And I could do some stuff in 3 years. They're like, boom. There's the crack in their belief where they begin to fall prey to disbelief, right? Mm-hmm. So you can test yourself.
Like for them to bite off. Yeah.
Exactly, which is why big goals don't work for everybody, because big goals are great in theory, but if you don't align emotionally, you're just cause yourself more harm than good.
So a lot of times if someone, let's say their exterior world isn't reflecting what it is that they'd like to have happen, they can make changes so that it does, right?
Well, absolutely. But the thing is, we're making changes all the time. We're either changing to something new or something that's the same. So, first recognize that we're changing 24/7 because that's an organic property of the universe. It's like a film strip. You either have the same picture being reflected in each component of the film strip, or there's new categories. Like if Walt Disney hadn't added something new, it would have appeared to be a stagnant picture. However, there was movement, right? Mm-hmm. So there's something changing. It's just changing to more same for most people. So, if someone is new to this and they feel overwhelmed by this, I would say start slow. Just start slow. Start with something easy. And begin to, play with your threshold of belief. Begin to become more acquainted with your emotional guidance system. Don't, go out and try to change the most dramatic things that are happening in your life, because it's just gonna rip you to shreds. So just start small. Start asking yourself, start questioning what you're saying. Do I really believe this to be true? Or I'm being honest with myself and I'm like, no, I don't believe that. It's fine if you don't, just find where you're misaligned and start being more honest with what your belief systems are. You don't have to do it with other people if that's not safe. Just do it with yourself. Make peace with where you are. There's a lot of pressure in our society to produce, to show you're quote unquote successful, whatever that means to each individual. So there's a lot of pressure to say things that we don't believe. But I would say slow down. This is your life. You really want to enjoy it. And when you begin to align with the beliefs that you say you want, you will feel the shift. But the thing is also, you can do, like people that say affirmations, they think the affirmation is going to do the change for them. So they make a lot of intellectual effort to say the affirmation, but nothing's going to change if you don't believe it. It's just not going to change.
They can't really feel it in their heart.
Yeah, and this is a vibrational universe. The universe we're creating it through vibration, and your indication of your vibration is emotion. So if you don't believe it, don't say the affirmations. Just because you saw some really famous person doing it, like, oh my God, I should say affirmations. No, actually you shouldn't if it doesn't work for you or if you don't believe what you're saying. My work is really all about self-help from yourself, like your physical, spiritual self, and blending that. It's not about following something that someone else is doing just because it looks like it works for them. I think we're done with that as a people.
Yeah. Now, I know in your book you also talk about inspired action. So what is that?
So for me, I'm terming the difference between action, which is like, I think I should do this, where you should all over yourself. I think I should do this business move. I think I should do this personal move. I think I should eat this. But it's not an inspired action. It's something you think you should do because you think it's going to cause this external result. And oftentimes it's being done because it's based on a belief that you should be different, or it's been told to you, or it's something that is feels like a lot of work. When you do it, you just oh my God, it's a lot of work. Versus inspired action, which is what I'm calling is a communication with your higher self. It's based on a level of excitement, interest, curiosity, passion, motivation. It's a conversation that is direct with your higher self. Your higher self is sending you inspiration, curiosity, interest, and a desire to move towards something. And that's the inspired action because it's communication with your whole self. Your whole self has the broad view, and you have like a mountaintop view, and you have the view from the trail because you're an incarnate physical person and you've just lost the sight of the overall perspective just for that exact purpose, actually, to not be seeing it all. But your higher self has this bigger perspective, and it goes, I'm going to tell you through the language of emotion, which is excitement, that this is the most accelerated path to the thing that you want, the thing that you're asking for, the thing you're desiring. And it may not be the shortest path from a linear perspective, but it's the most accelerated path from a personal fulfillment, from a results effective oriented way. So it's the difference between following what's typically external data that you're gathering from other people, from reading books possibly, or it could be a belief system that you were taught as a kid, like you heard it from your parents or something, versus this very intimate, personalized, never out of whack inner guidance conversation that then spurs an action.
So, and this kind of leads me to my next question. So I know a lot of times people will see, they'll kind of say, well, my weight's not where I want it to be, or my wealth isn't, and I'm not really happy. And they use those as indicators for worthiness. What do you have to say to that?
Oh, that's just something we've been trained to do, right? Because we've been trained to see output as worthiness. It starts in grade school. I used to teach elementary school. I'm very familiar with this idea of produce and we'll love you. If you can do this, then I will reward you with my love. Unconditional love is a very rare thing. And what I'm trying to get us to recognize is first how to unconditionally love ourselves. And then when we're stable in that, we can offer that to other people. But that's just a conditioning. That just says, unless you produce, I will withhold something from you. The world says it, that's probably, I shouldn't say probably, it's different for every person. But that is a conversation that is big for a lot of people. It's big for me. It's big for other people. And I had to recognize it. I had to make peace with it. And then I had to say, you know what? And this is through regular, daily experiences and opportunities in every moment move a little bit farther along the spectrum that says, if I don't produce, I'm still worthy. If I don't lose weight, I'm still worthy. If I have gray hair, I'm still worthy. It's a sense of being shoved off your mark and then going, wait, I didn't really like that. I want to be back here. And the irony is when you're in this place of acceptance, of love, of knowing that you don't have to produce to be worthy, that's when things start happening. That's when the inspired action happens. That's when you get the job that you really wanted. You get all of a sudden the money starts coming in. And it's because you're aligned and allowing. And one of the steps is allowing. So it's being able to recognize your inherent worth. And that's also part of the conversation of knowing you're a source inspired being. So your worthiness is automatic. But then, coming into this world and rectifying the difference between having to produce to be worthy or change to be worthy and just being worthy.
Yeah, I love your message in regards to that, because I think we can never hear it enough. I think people are so bombarded, and everyone probably has that I'm not worthy in one way or another story going on. It could be, from acknowledgement for parents or how they feel about themselves in regards to all those things. But there's hope. So it's not like, well, gosh, I've got to keep chasing my tail on this one forever.
Oh, you will make progress. And I can't promise that anyone's going to achieve a pinnacle point, because I really don't think there is a pinnacle point. I think the point of this experience is to have contrast, is to have these experiences where we get to say, no, thank you to that, and thank you to this, because that's where our expansion of soul level beings happens. It happens in the contrast. So don't expect to be rid of it. Don't try to live fearlessly. Don't try to get to this pinnacle point, because guess what? That's what happens when you're dead. You move on to pure positive energy and there's no contrast. Mm-hmm. But this experience is about the contrast, and that's the value right there. The value is having an experience and going, can I love myself in the face of looking in the mirror? Can I love myself when the bank account says negative $30? Mm-hmm. Can I do that? And I think it has been brushed off as kind of esoteric. Oh, yeah, that's great. Great. Love yourself. I want the money. I want the body. I want the relationship. Well, guess what? It starts in this pivotal point, because we are vibrational beings incarnate in a physical experience. You can't take away this aspect of us, and vibrational meaning spiritual, pure consciousness. That's us. That's us. So you can't deviate and try to step around that aspect of understanding, or it's just not going to make any sense.
Yeah. Well, and then another thing you talk about in your book is detached optimism. And I really like that. And so I wanted you to expand on that for our listeners.
Well, so this is something I had to practice myself, right? It's like detached optimism is being able to focus on something, almost like a blurred picture, where you have the image itself it may not be so specific, because honestly, it doesn't matter what the specificity of your visualization is, because it's the feeling. So it's being able to focus in a direction, and it's better if it's blurry, honestly, because when it gets too specific, we go, oh, I thought it was supposed to look like, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But focus in the direction of what you want, but be able to sensitize or be sensual in the feeling of what you want. I think that's part of where visualization has gone astray, because it goes visualize and put in the details and paint your picture. Well, that's great, but the chances of it happening are pretty much zero to none that it's going to happen that way. So people get so involved in the mental image that they become contracted in their energy, and they go, it's got to look this way because this is the way my mind picked it. But actually what's happening is the data that you're using to create this quote-unquote future picture is all based on past experience. Because guess what? You can't predict the future. The future is so infinitely bounteous, bounty, I don't know if that's a word, is so big, and there are so many possible timelines to orchestrate this life experience on that you just don't know. So it seems like it works better for a lot of us to shut our intellectual faculty down a little bit and maybe have a broad stroke idea of what we want that doesn't allow us to get too emotionally caught up in the details, and be able to just relax and be happy about the idea. So really detached optimism is less about the visual mental capability and more about the sensual capability of being able to sit, because once the thing that you think you want shows up, it's not going to look like it does in your head. So
sometimes it's actually much better, which is even nice,
It is, but a lot of people get...
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, well, it feels like we limit ourselves if we're not just open to the other possibilities of what could show up,
And we do, and this is part of a fault of standardized education, because we're so detail-oriented. It's like our head is so heavy, we're dragging it along on the sidewalk because it's gotten so large, and we've forgotten to be heart-based, gut-based, sensual-based people, and we over-intellectualize things, and we miss opportunities well, we don't miss opportunities. I shouldn't say that, because everything is working out perfectly. But we miss the joyful expression and the realization of each experience when we're too demanding of how we think it's supposed to look. So again, that's kind of where personal development needs to take a little bit of a turn, in my opinion, because it's still a heady process. Personal development is still very heady, and spiritual development is usually very esoteric. So what I'm trying to say is, hey guys, it's like, let's work together and let's know that we're spiritual beings, and all the crap we go through is because we're spiritual beings. Like, nobody is more spiritual than anyone else, because guess what? We're all spiritual. Some of us just decide to blend it in a little more. Others are like, nah, thanks. Not my cup of tea.
Well, and we've got a few minutes here. I mean, we could talk forever. I mean, your book was so insightful. Your messaging is as well. What are some final thoughts that you would like to leave our listeners with?
So what I would like to say is that you may wish to begin to listen to your intuitive guidance more than outside guidance, because it will never let you go wrong. And I talk more about that in the book, about what intuitive guidance is, what it feels like. But my work is all about giving power back to each individual and saying, you know what? There is no better self-help than from your total self. So just, let's just empower ourselves to know that, it's great to take outside guidance and, advice and stuff and incorporate that. But ultimately, you know yourself best. And so it's time for us to all just begin to trust ourselves and love ourselves. And I believe this is the next generation is going to take this and run with it. I've got 3 kids. I can see it already. They're really cued into their own internal guidance, and they're going to explore this, and it's going to explode, and innovation's going to explode, and happiness is going to increase, and this is where we're going. So.
Yeah, it's definitely a direction we're going in. Now, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
Well, I would say just go to my website, which is living360coaching.com, and from there you can jump off into different explorations. That's sort of a central point for me.
Mm-hmm. And connect with you there. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Allison, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us today.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Allison. It's been such a joy to have you here with us today. Unfortunately, we're at the end of our time together. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.